I'm going to read to you from Chapter 3. It's January 1953. As I've grown older, I've played the following scene over and over in my mind. By now, it may well be my most vivid memory. It was a chilly evening in early January. We were all in the living room, relaxing and staying warm by the fireplace. Grandpa added more wood on top of the smoldering logs, moving the pieces with the fire poker until a flame ignited, and then the wood crackled and burned steadily. Then Grandpa returned to his brown chair to listen to his radio show, The Shadow. I was in my new pajamas, the blue ones with the knotted silk buttons, which Daddy had sent me for Christmas from Korea. I sat on the warm linoleum floor near the fireplace, brushing my new doll's hair. Grandma sat on the brown and cream-colored couch, where she was knitting an afghan. Mom sat next to Grandma, putting Scotty's pajamas on. A knock on the door interrupted the calm in the room. Grandpa got up, turned down the radio, and opened the front door. A strange man in a uniform stood at the doorway. Grandpa invited him into the living room. Something seemed official to me about this uniformed man. I got up off the floor, grabbed my doll, and moved to sit in the desk chair next to the fireplace. Everyone was speaking in hushed tones. I couldn't hear anything this somber-looking stranger said, but I saw worried looks on my mom's and grandparents' faces. Mom rose and set Scotty on the couch next to Grandma. Grandpa stood in front of his chair as his visitor handed Mom what looked like a letter. The man left after he delivered the letter. Grandpa closed the door and sat back down in his chair. Still standing, Mom opened the letter. I couldn't hear what she said to her parents in a low voice, but I watched and heard both her and Grandma crying as I sat nearby. I felt alone and sensed something really bad must have happened. The next thing I knew, Mom told me, "It's time to go to bed, Diana." But I didn't want to leave. If I stayed, maybe she'd tell me why they were crying. It must be something only adults could understand. This was the first time I had ever seen my mom or Grandma cry. They looked hurt, and that scared me. My heart understood that something bad had happened. I was used to Daddy's letters coming, but this letter delivered by a stranger was different. Mom didn't read it to me, although my mind didn't grasp what had transpired. The sadness and anxiety in the living room had penetrated my heart. It was nighttime, pitch black outside. As was usual for me, I walked by myself the short distance from the main house to the building where I slept. Mom must have figured I was old enough to walk alone without an adult to accompany me. She didn't know that it had taken me a while to get over my fear that some animal might get me on the way to bed. But on this night, I felt afraid, not of any animals, but of being unaccompanied. I didn't want to be left alone, especially after all the crying I'd heard. I wanted my mom or Grandma to come to bed with me, to be with me, to hold me. Even at just 5 years old, I was able to associate the crying, the letter, and the man's uniform with something bad happening. And I could guess the bad news was something about my father. Upon entering the building, I turned on the single small lamp in the room. It was cold even inside. Wisps from my breath shone in the dim light. I slipped off my slippers and shivered as my bare feet touched the cold concrete floor. I quickly climbed into bed and pulled the heavy covers over me. It was so quiet, frighteningly quiet. I was the only one there. Scotty was still in the main house with Mom. I missed his being there with me. I lay in bed thinking about my father, talking to him in my mind. I said, "Daddy, a letter came and everyone was crying. I'm afraid something bad happened to you. Where are you, Daddy? I want you home, Daddy."